If you're going to cry, do it outside, my husband whispered while 120 guests watched security escort me from the charity gala I had helped him build. Grant Whitmore never stopped smiling as he said it. That was the detail I remembered most. His fingers were locked around my wrist hard enough to leave pale dents in my skin, but his expression belonged on the cover of a Dallas Society magazine, calm, polished, generous. Behind him, a wall of white roses framed the logo of the Whitmore Children's Foundation. Crystal chandeliers scattered light over champagne glasses. A string quartet kept playing because people with money are trained to pretend a disaster is merely bad acoustics. 3 hours earlier, I was supposed to be on a flight to New York to present the largest campaign of my career. Instead, I had driven back to our house in Highland Park because my passport was sitting in the top drawer of my nightstand. I had been halfway to Dallas Love Field when I realized it. My driver offered to turn around. I almost told him no. I could have used an emergency appointment at the airport, missed the first meeting, invented some explanation. If I had done that, I might still be married to a man who was quietly planning to erase me. The house was too warm when I stepped inside. Grant always kept it at 68 degrees, even in January, but that afternoon the upstairs air felt heavy and close. I heard laughter above me before I saw anything. A man's low voice. A woman answering with the breathless little laugh I had known since college. Chloe Mercer had been my best friend for 16 years. She had held my bouquet at my wedding, slept on a vinyl chair beside me after my first fertility procedure, and learned exactly how to squeeze my hand when another test came back negative. When I heard her laugh from my bedroom, my mind produced every innocent explanation it could find. She had stopped by. Grant was showing her something. They were planning a surprise for me. Then I saw Grant's jacket folded across the hall bench and Chloe's cream-colored dress on the rug I had spent 2 months choosing. I took out my phone and pressed record before I pushed the door open. Chloe was in my bed. Grant was leaning over her, kissing the curve of her shoulder. On her ears were my mother's emerald earrings, the only jewelry I had kept after Mom died. I stored them in a locked walnut box at the back of my closet. I wore them twice a year, once on Mom's birthday and once on mine. Ava, Chloe said, scrambling for the sheet. Don't say my name with that mouth. Grant straightened slowly. He did not cover himself at first. He looked at me the way he looked at a junior analyst who had entered a meeting without knocking. Put the phone down, he said. We can discuss this like adults. I've spent 7 years discussing my life with a man who apparently never existed. Chloe started crying. Even then, she was careful not to smudge her mascara. She pressed the sheet to her chest, and one emerald flashed between strands of her blonde hair. You gave her my mother's earrings? My voice sounded strangely level. Grant glanced at them as if I were complaining about a borrowed charger. They were sitting in a box. Chloe appreciated them. They were locked away because they were mine. This is exactly what I mean. He exhaled and pinched the bridge of his nose. You turn every disappointment into an emergency. The flights, the treatments, the agency. Everyone has to live inside your anxiety. The cruelty of that sentence was not accidental. Grant knew the map of every tender place inside me. He knew I sometimes cried in the shower after fertility appointments so he would not feel pressured. He knew I had started therapy after my mother's death because grief had made sleep difficult. He had praised me for getting help. Now he was taking those private facts and arranging them into a weapon. Chloe whispered, "This wasn't supposed to happen this way." "How was it supposed to happen?" I asked. "After my flight took off? Before or after you wore my dead mother's earrings to dinner?" Grant stepped toward me. "Your car is waiting. Go to New York. Handle your presentation. We'll address this when you can be rational." I looked at the man I had married in a courthouse ceremony 7 years earlier, before the country club reception, before the magazine photos, before I learned that his favorite form of violence left no visible bruise. Then I turned and walked out. By the time I reached my car, messages were arriving. Do not cause a scene. Tonight's gala involves donors and clients. If you show up unstable, you will confirm what people already suspect. The final message came 2 minutes later. Your cards and house access are temporarily suspended for everyone's safety. I tried my key code from the driveway. The app said my credentials had been revoked. Grant had locked me out of the home where half the furniture had been purchased with my salary. I still had the passport in my bag, one emerald earring in the locked closet, and a wedding ring that suddenly felt like evidence from a crime scene. I told the driver to take me to a hotel. At the front desk, both credit cards Grant had added me to were declined. My personal card worked, but watching the clerk wait politely while I tried them felt like standing naked under fluorescent lights. I booked one night, sat on the edge of the bed, and listened to the recording again. At first, all I heard was betrayal. Grant's voice. Chloe's gasp. My own breath, fast and shallow. On the third replay, I heard something else. As I turned to leave, Grant had muttered, "We'll move up the evaluation." I did not know what evaluation he meant. At 6:14 p.m., Grant's mother texted me. Evelyn Whitmore was not an affectionate woman. She sent flowers instead of apologies and signed birthday cards with her full name. Her message read, "Come to the gala. I'll make sure you receive your documents and your mother's jewelry. Grant has promised to resolve this respectfully." There was still a humiliatingly hopeful corner of me that believed the word respectfully. I changed into the black dress packed for New York, washed my face, and went to the Dallas Country Club. I told myself I was going only for my passport file and the earrings. I told myself Evelyn would meet me in a quiet room. I told myself Grant would want to keep the scandal small. He had invited me because he wanted an audience. When I entered the ballroom, Chloe was standing beside him in another cream dress, my emeralds glowing beneath the stage lights. The sight of her wearing them in public, less than 4 hours after I found her in my bed, was so outrageous that my body went cold instead of hot. Several friends stopped speaking when they saw me. One woman looked at Chloe, then at me, and quickly lowered her eyes. Grant reached the microphone before I crossed half the room. "Before we continue," he said, "I want to address a private matter that has unfortunately entered a public space." The quartet fell silent. Cameras turned. Chloe placed one hand over her heart as if bracing for a tragedy happening to her. "My wife has struggled emotionally through our family situation," Grant continued. "Those of you who know us understand how much we have wanted children and how difficult that journey has been for her. Today, she arrived at our home unexpectedly and misinterpreted a friendship in a deeply painful way." The room changed around me. People who had eaten at my table, celebrated my promotion, and asked me to design their brands now watched me with careful pity. Grant had transformed his adultery into my breakdown before I could say one sentence. Chloe took the microphone. "Ava needs compassion, not cameras." I raised my phone. "Show them what kind of compassion you were giving my husband in my bed." Grant's smile froze for perhaps half a second. Then he recovered. "You see," he said softly into the microphone. "Secret recordings. Public threats. My attorneys have already prepared a safe separation because this behavior has escalated. Ava left our residence today, and under the agreement she signed before our marriage, she has no claim to Whitmore family property." I had not left. I had been locked out. But the distinction disappeared beneath the rustle of 120 people deciding which version would protect their social lives. Evelyn sat at a table near the stage. She stared at the untouched dessert in front of her and did not look at me. 2 security guards moved through the crowd. Chloe touched the earrings, a tiny triumphant gesture she probably thought no one noticed. "You should go," she said. "Before you make this worse." I walked straight to her. Up close, I could smell my own perfume on her, the bottle she had borrowed from my bathroom months earlier and never returned. I lifted my hand, unfastened one emerald, and removed it from her ear with a steadiness I did not feel. "Keep the other one tonight," I said. "It matches the shame." Someone near the bar choked back a laugh. 3 phones rose higher. Chloe's face flushed dark red. Grant seized my wrist. His thumb pressed into the tendon. "Tomorrow you will sign what I put in front of you," he said without moving. His smile. "If you try to destroy me, I'll make sure no one in this city hires an unstable woman who steals private files and threatens donors." The room was close enough to hear him, but no one moved. That was the true power Grant believed he owned, not money, but the confidence that other people would choose comfort over truth. I pulled free. "Then you'd better hope the truth needs your permission." I walked out with my back straight. Each step felt as if I were carrying the 9,000 square foot house on my shoulders. The moment the ballroom doors closed, my knees almost gave way. A man stood beside my car in the parking lot. At first, I thought Grant had sent another attorney. Then he stepped beneath a light, and I recognized Chloe's husband, Ethan Mercer. Ethan was a pediatric cardiologist at Children's Medical Center. He missed most of our dinners because of emergency calls. And Chloe had spent years describing him as emotionally absent. That night his tie was crooked, his eyes swollen, and a small silver key rested in his palm. "I found out today too," he said. I did not answer. I was too tired to offer comfort to the other person my best friend had betrayed. "Chloe left her email open on our home computer," he continued. "Grant told her to move something from a private office safe to a bank box. I went before she could. I know I should have called an attorney first, but I saw your initials." He held out a black flash drive and a photograph on his phone. The photograph showed a gray folder labeled AB Plan, Capacity, Divorce, Clients. The cold inside me sharpened. "There's more than an affair," Ethan said. "Grant has been preparing to have you declared incapable of managing your finances. He's also using your name on transactions you never authorized." Behind us, the ballroom music resumed. Through the glass doors, I could see people dancing beneath the foundation logo while Grant's public version of me settled over the room like dust. I closed my fingers around the drive. Grant thought he had removed me from his world with one elegant lie. He did not know he had just handed me the door to the machinery behind it. Ethan drove because my hands were shaking too badly. We went to my Aunt Lena's bungalow in Oak Cliff, where I had spent summers as a teenager after my mother got sick. Lena opened the door in pajamas and did not ask why I arrived with a stranger at 10:30 p.m. She hugged me, took one look at my wrist, and put a bag of frozen peas in my hand. "Kitchen," she said. "Truth first. Collapse later." We connected the drive to an old laptop that had never touched Grant's network. The first folder contained audio files. In one recording, Grant's voice was crisp and casual. "When Ava finds out about us, we say the treatments made her obsessive. The therapist establishes a history. The prenup gets her out of the house, and the capacity petition keeps her from interfering with the accounts. What matters is that she signs the campaign authorizations before she understands the fund." Chloe's voice followed. "What if she reviews the signatures? By then, everyone will believe she's in crisis." The second folder contained emails from a private account. Grant had used my name, my agency biography, and samples of campaigns I had led to persuade 3 women entrepreneurs to invest a combined $4.8 million in a real estate development fund. The pitch materials called me a strategic advisor and implied that my agency had vetted the properties. I had never heard of the fund. One attachment contained a digital image of my signature. I recognized where it came from, a release form I signed at Chloe's kitchen table after agreeing to appear in a fundraiser video. She had watched me sign it. She had scanned it. Ethan leaned back from the screen as if it had pushed him. "She told me she traveled with you for work. She told me you ignored her for weeks and that she only stayed because she was afraid of being alone." He closed his eyes. "I changed my hospital rotation because she said my schedule was ruining our marriage. I turned down a job in Chicago because Grant said our fertility doctor needed us both here. We were not bonded by revenge. We were bonded by the sick realization that 2 people had used our devotion as scenery." At 1 a.m., I called Maya Brooks, an attorney whose branding project I had directed 2 years earlier. She specialized in financial fraud and high-conflict divorce. I gave her the shortest version I could. She listened without interrupting. "Do not contact Grant," she said. "Do not post the video. Do not sign anything. Send me a copy of the drive through the secure link I'm sending now. Tomorrow we preserve your work records, contact the banks connected to your personal accounts, and document that you were locked out. If they truly planned a capacity petition, every documented step matters. He already told a ballroom full of people I'm unstable. Then we make sure the next room hears evidence." I slept for 47 minutes on Lena's sofa. At dawn, I woke with my fist still closed around the single emerald earring. My first instinct was to hide. Grant had predicted it. He knew humiliation could make a person surrender before any legal paper arrived. But at 8:15, I showered, put on navy trousers and a white blouse, and drove to Bennett & Rowe, the advertising agency where I had worked for 11 years. My access badge still opened the elevator. That small green light nearly made me cry. My department head, Paul Denning, was waiting in my office with human resources. His sympathy looked rehearsed. "Grant called 2 clients," he said. "He mentioned a severe personal episode. They want reassurance you can lead the New York campaign." "Did they ask about the work?" "They asked about risk." I placed my portfolio, the signed client brief, and my travel itinerary on the desk. "Then assess my work. Do not diagnose me through the man who cheated on me." Paul's face tightened. "Ava, we are trying to protect you. Protect me by not repeating his language." Before he answered, the office door opened. Margaret Bennett, the agency's 67-year-old founder, walked in wearing red glasses and carrying a legal pad. She had mentored me before Grant began calling her a bad influence and complaining that she encouraged me to be too ambitious. "Ava remains creative lead," Margaret said. "I reviewed the work at 6 o'clock this morning. If a client uses a domestic rumor to invalidate her professional capacity, that client may choose another agency." Paul started to object. Margaret raised one finger. "And legal is preserving every email sent from Grant Whitmore concerning our employee or our brand. Someone used this agency's identity in an investment pitch. That is not marital gossip. That is exposure." For the first time since the bedroom door opened, someone with power had named what was happening accurately. I made it to the restroom before my legs began trembling. Margaret followed but did not touch me until I nodded. "You are allowed to be hurt and competent at the same time," she said. I repeated those words all morning. At noon, Evelyn Whitmore called. Her voice was lower than usual. "I need to see you without my son knowing. Maya advised me to meet in public and bring Lena." We chose a nearly empty restaurant in University Park. Evelyn arrived with no driver, no pearls, and a leather folder pressed to her ribs. I did not look at you last night, she said before sitting, because I was ashamed of my son and more ashamed that I had helped him become a man who expected silence. I waited. An apology from a Whitmore usually arrived carrying an invoice. She opened the folder. Before your wedding, Grant gave you an inventory of assets attached to the prenuptial agreement. He told you the Highland Park house, certain warehouses, and family investment accounts were protected property. I remember. The inventory was incomplete. I found the original schedules this morning. Grant concealed minority interests in 4 warehouses, 2 apartment buildings, and a ranch partnership. Some were already producing income when you signed. If he tries to enforce the agreement while hiding those assets, your attorney should know. Lena inhaled sharply. I looked at Evelyn. Why are you helping me? Her composure broke around the eyes. Because I saw your mother's earrings on Chloe. I knew what they were. Grant told me you had given them away during an episode, and for one terrible minute I chose to believe him because it was easier. Then I remembered the way he spoke about his father's first wife. The same words. Emotional. Confused. Ungrateful. I realized my silence was not neutrality. It was collaboration. She slid the documents across the table. Does Grant know you have these? Maya asked. No. But he will know soon. He has scheduled a private signing tonight at the Crescent Hotel. Investors and society press will be present because he intends to announce a new fund. He believes Ava will sign a separation agreement on stage and validate his version. My phone rang from an unknown number. We all looked at it. Grant did not say hello. You will be at the Crescent at 7 o'clock. If you cooperate, I'll give you enough money to disappear with dignity. And if I don't? I release documentation of your treatment history. I tell every client that you are staying with Chloe's husband. People believe patterns, Ava. The abandoned wife, the doctor, the breakdown. You're already giving them a better story than the truth. Ethan was at the hospital. I had spent one night under my aunt's roof. Grant knew that, but facts were only raw material to him. I'll be there, I said. His tone softened with satisfaction. I knew you would remember who has the power. When the call ended, the table was silent. Maya looked at me. You do not have to walk into his theater. I thought about the gala, the security guards, the way friends had studied my face for proof of madness. I thought about Grant's recorded voice promising that everyone would believe I was in crisis. If I stayed away, he would sign my absence into his narrative. If I went, I could lose control in exactly the way he expected. Margaret arrived 20 minutes later with the agency's cybersecurity director. Ethan left the hospital as soon as his relief physician came. We sat in the restaurant's private room and built a plan that depended on evidence, timing, and my ability to stand within 10 feet of Grant without giving him the reaction he wanted. At 6:55 p.m., I entered the Crescent Ballroom wearing a simple black dress and one emerald earring. I had chosen the empty ear deliberately. It was not a fashion statement. It was a missing object that told the truth before I said a word. Grant stood beneath a screen displaying the silver logo of Whitmore Urban Equity. Chloe was beside him, pale beneath her makeup. She had kept the other emerald on. An assistant placed a fountain pen in front of an empty chair at center stage. Donors, investors, and 3 local reporters watched me sit. Grant lifted his glass. Tonight we begin a new personal and professional chapter. My wife has agreed to step away from our marriage and from certain advisory responsibilities so she can focus on her health. He set a separation agreement before me. The first page promised a payment that looked generous until Maya had calculated what I would waive: the house, claims to undisclosed property, any cause of action involving use of my name, and the right to challenge decisions made on my behalf during an undefined period of incapacity. Sign, Ava, Grant said softly, though the microphone carried every syllable. Don't prolong your embarrassment. I picked up the pen. He smiled. Then I placed it across the document. Before I sign, I said, your investors deserve to hear the strategy you used to sell them my name. Margaret pressed a control from the second row. The fund logo disappeared. In its place was the gray folder labeled AB Plan, Capacity, Divorce, Clients. Grant's recorded voice filled the room. By then, everyone will believe she's in crisis. Chloe dropped her champagne glass. It shattered at her feet. Grant turned toward me. For the first time in 7 years, I saw his face with no smile and no mask. Turn that off, he shouted, lunging toward the control table. Those files were stolen and edited. Margaret's cybersecurity director stepped between Grant and the laptop without touching him. The original files and metadata have been preserved by counsel. This playback is a copy. The screen shifted to a chain of emails. My signature appeared beneath an authorization for a property purchase in Fort Worth. My agency biography was attached under the title Strategic Brand and Market Advisor. At the bottom was an email from Grant to Chloe: "Get Ava to sign the gala release. I need a clean sample." People began reading aloud in low voices. Grant's investors were not social guests now. They were men and women seeing their money next to forged authorization. "My wife has been under extraordinary stress," Grant said. He had found the microphone again, and with it, a fraction of his control. "She is surrounded by people exploiting a private marital dispute. You are watching retaliation dressed as evidence." "I delivered the drive," Ethan said from the first row. Chloe looked at him as if he had stepped out of a grave. He rose slowly. "I found the key and the emails in our home. My wife was instructed to move these records. I made copies before I surrendered them to counsel. Ava did not ask me to enter our house, access Chloe's account, or create a single document." Grant pointed at him. "You're sleeping under the same roof as my wife." "No," Ethan said. "Ava stayed with her aunt. You knew that when you threatened to spread this lie. I was at the hospital until 5:40 this afternoon, and my location is documented. You keep betting that accusation is louder than proof." The room went very still. Ethan did not sound furious. He sounded like a doctor explaining a fatal test result. Grant pivoted toward the investors. "A bitter husband found private marital communications and is mischaracterizing them. The fund remains solvent. Every transaction was reviewed." "By whom?" asked Denise Walker, the founder of a home health company whose $1.6 million investment appeared on the screen. Grant opened his mouth. "Because I invested after you told me Ava personally vetted the tenant strategy," Denise continued. "You showed me a letter with her signature. That was an administrative misunderstanding. Did she sign it?" The question was simple enough to break through all his polished language. I stood. No. I had never seen the letter, the fund, or the Fort Worth property until last night. Denise turned to Grant. "Then you did not misunderstand. You lied. Phones were no longer aimed at me. They were aimed at him." Chloe bent to pick up the stem of her shattered glass. Her hand shook. Grant reached down and closed his fingers around her forearm. "Go to the suite," he muttered. She flinched. It was a tiny movement, but Ethan saw it. So did I. Grant had spent years training me to doubt the meaning of his grip, his tone, his little corrections. Delivered with a smile. I knew the moment Chloe realized she had not been promoted from accomplice to partner. She had only become the next woman expected to obey. "Let go of her," Ethan said. Grant released her and raised both hands. "Look at this performance. They planned every second." Maya stood near the aisle. "Mr. Whitmore, I represent Ava. You were notified this afternoon to preserve all records involving her identity, the fund, and any proposed capacity proceeding. The materials shown tonight have been provided to the relevant institutions. Nothing depends on this room believing her." That frightened him more than the recording. I saw it in the way his eyes moved toward the exits. Public opinion had been his shield, but Maya had quietly moved the dispute into places where applause did not matter. He leaned close to me. "You have no idea what you've done." "I know exactly what I stopped signing." He gave a short laugh and faced the room. "Ava approved the campaign work verbally. My team can confirm it. She benefited from our success for years, and now she wants to rewrite our marriage because she found out I had feelings for someone else." Chloe's face changed at the phrase "someone else." Not because he denied the affair, but because he reduced her to an inconvenience in his defense. "Tell them," Grant said to her. "Tell them Ava knew you consulted for the fund." Chloe stared at him. "She didn't." His jaw tightened. "You're confused." "No. She didn't know." The answer moved through the ballroom like a current. Grant stepped closer to her. "We discussed what tonight required." Chloe backed away. She put one protective hand over her abdomen. I had seen the gesture at the gala and assumed it was nerves. Now Ethan's expression told me he understood before I did. "You're pregnant," he said. Chloe closed her eyes. The cruelty of the revelation was not that she carried Grant's child. It was that Ethan learned in a ballroom full of strangers, beneath the same bright lights where I had been told my grief made me irrational. 11 weeks, she whispered. Ethan gripped the back of his chair. I wanted to look away, but Chloe opened her purse and removed a folded manila envelope. "Grant said the separation agreement would protect the baby," she said. "He said Ava would destroy all of us if she found out. This afternoon he gave me papers to sign as a witness. I read them after Ethan called me from the bank." Grant's voice dropped. "Do not do this. The papers say I initiated the investor communications and stored the signatures. They say I transferred money without your knowledge." "That is not what they say." "It is. Exactly what they say." She handed the envelope to Maya. "There are wire instructions to accounts I never received and client names I don't recognize. He wanted my signature beneath a statement accepting responsibility." That was the first reversal Grant had not prepared for. His mistress stopped obeying when she understood he intended to make her both mother and scapegoat. I felt no gratitude toward Chloe. She had entered my home, opened my jewelry box, copied my signature, and stood beside Grant while he called me unstable. Her fear did not erase her choices. But truth did not have to come from an innocent person to be true. Grant reached for the envelope. Maya pulled it back. "You're destroying our child's future," he said to Chloe. Tears slipped down her face, but her voice held. "No. I'm keeping my child from growing up believing a man can buy." Silence with fear. Ethan turned away. His shoulders rose once, then settled. The sentence had been brave, but bravery spoken too late could still cut the person who had waited for it. Margaret projected the wire instructions. The receiving company was called Blue Heron Advisory. Denise Walker leaned toward the screen. "That isn't one of the entities listed in our subscription documents." An older man named Robert Hale, Grant's managing partner, stood from a side table. He had been silent through every recording. "Blue Heron billed our firm for feasibility studies," he said. Grant told the audit committee it was owned by an outside consultant. Maya looked at Chloe's documents. "The registered agent listed here is CW Holdings." Ethan spoke without turning around. "Chloe's initials are CW." Chloe shook her head violently. "I have never owned a company." Grant spread his hands. "She signed the registration forms." "He brought papers to the house with tabs," Chloe said. "He told me they were confidentiality agreements for the foundation." The second reversal landed harder than the first. Grant had not merely used Chloe to steal my signature. He had placed a shell company in her path so investigators would find her before they found him. Robert Hale removed his glasses. "Our internal accountant flagged 3 Blue Heron payments last month." Grant said Ava's agency had subcontracted the research. Margaret's voice was ice. "We did not." "I know that now." Robert looked toward the 3 investors. "This morning, I asked outside counsel to preserve the fund accounts. I did not understand the link to Ava until tonight, but no additional distribution will move without review." Grant stared at him. "You froze my fund?" "The committee froze a disputed account. It was never yours alone." The third reversal stripped away the last stage prop Grant had counted on. The announcement meant to display his financial power had gathered every person capable of questioning it in one room. He looked at me then, not Chloe, not Robert, not Ethan. In Grant's mind, all resistance had to originate from one disobedient woman. "You planned this," he said. "You wrote the files," I replied. "You recorded the threat. You forged the signature. You prepared papers for Chloe. You called my clients. I only stopped hiding what you did." Evelyn rose from a table near the back. Until that moment, Grant had not seen her. "And your wife did not make you lie before your wedding," she said. He went pale. "Mother, sit down." She walked toward the stage carrying the leather folder. Her posture was rigid, but her hands trembled against the clasp. "7 years ago, my son presented an incomplete asset schedule to Ava before she signed their marital agreement. These are copies of the original family records showing interests he omitted." Grant stepped down from the stage. "Those are confidential trust documents. They are evidence that you expected honesty from a bride while practicing concealment yourself. You don't understand the structure." "I understand it because I administered the trust after your father died." Evelyn looked at Maya. "I will provide certified records through counsel." Grant's mask broke completely. "You would hand family property to her after she humiliated us?" Evelyn's eyes filled, but she did not lower them. "You humiliated this family when you used a dead woman's earrings to reward an affair and a grieving woman's therapy to build a legal attack." He snatched one page from the folder. The sound of tearing paper cracked through the microphones. Cameras captured it from 5 angles. Evelyn did not fight him for the page. She simply opened the folder and revealed 3 more copies. "I defended you for years because I thought you were merely arrogant," she said. "Tonight I learned you are cruel." Grant looked around the ballroom as if searching for the version of the crowd he had controlled at the country club. It was gone. The investors watched him with suspicion. The reporters were typing. His partner stood beside outside counsel. His mother had moved next to me. Chloe had retreated toward the wall, one hand over her unborn child. Ethan stared at the floor because looking at her cost too much. Grant grabbed my upper arm. "You caused this," he hissed. His grip lasted less than a second. Evelyn stepped between us and shoved his hand away. "Do not touch her again." I had never heard her raise her voice. Neither had he. Hotel security approached, but Maya signaled for them to stop at a distance. She did not want Grant transformed into a victim by a dramatic removal. She wanted the room to watch him choose what came next. Robert Hale took the microphone. "Effective immediately, Grant Whitmore is suspended from all client and investment activity pending an independent review." Any person who has documents related to Whitmore Urban Equity will receive preservation instructions tonight. Grant laughed, a raw sound with no humor. I built this firm. I made half of you rich. And that belief, Robert said, is why you thought our money belonged to you. Chloe reached up and removed the remaining emerald earring. She placed it on the table in front of me. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said. This was never mine. The matching stones lay together for the first time since I opened my bedroom door. One was warm from Chloe's skin. I wrapped both in a cocktail napkin rather than put them on. They felt too connected to the worst day of my life. You chose this, I told her. Helping now does not make the choice disappear. She nodded and began to cry harder. But give Maya everything, I added. Do not let him turn your guilt into another cage. Ethan left before Chloe. He passed me without speaking, then stopped at the door. I'm sorry you lost her too, he said. I'm sorry you had to learn in here. He nodded once and walked out. Grant remained near the stage while guests moved away from him. At the earlier gala, silence had made me look guilty. Here, silence made him look untouchable in the worst sense, a man no one wanted to shake hands with. I did not feel triumphant. I felt emptied out. The public confrontation had stopped him from forcing my signature, but it had not restored 7 years, my marriage, my friendship, or the private future I had pictured with children in the upstairs bedrooms of our house. Maya gathered the documents. Margaret placed my coat over my shoulders. Lena waited by the door. Grant called after me. Ava, if you leave now, there is no fixing this. I turned. You said that as if you hadn't spent months making sure there was nothing left to fix. Outside, the night air smelled like rain. I stood beneath the hotel awning and let my body shake. Not because I was weak. Because I no longer had to perform calm for people who mistook composure for truth. The months that followed were not a victory montage. They were depositions, password changes, forensic reports, and mornings when getting out of bed required negotiation. Grant's attorneys challenged the drive, the recording, the asset schedules, and even the date I was locked out. They described every person who contradicted him as resentful. Their filings used softer words than Grant had used at the gala, but the story was the same: emotional wife, vindictive friend, confused mistress, disloyal mother. Evidence kept refusing to cooperate with that story. The forensic review traced Blue Heron payments through 2 additional entities before money reached an account Grant controlled. The account had paid for a condominium he claimed was a foundation guest residence. Building records showed Chloe had used it during supposed trips with me. Digital records tied my forged signature to files created on Grant's office computer. The capacity petition had not yet been filed, but his attorney's notes contained lists of my therapy appointments, fertility procedures, and statements taken out of context from messages I sent my husband when I was grieving. The 3 investors filed claims. Robert's firm removed Grant after outside counsel found that he had bypassed approval rules. Regulators opened inquiries. No single courtroom speech ended his career. Documents did it, one dated line at a time. My own case moved more slowly. Maya warned me that truth did not make legal work painless. Grant fought access to the house and claimed my personal belongings had been gifts to the marital estate. Evelyn provided photographs and receipts showing my mother's jewelry belonged to me. She also gave sworn testimony about the incomplete asset schedule. The prenuptial agreement did not vanish with a dramatic stamp, but the court refused to treat it as the flawless shield Grant had advertised. 6 weeks after the hotel, I returned to the Highland Park house with Maya and a neutral property officer. The white roses from the gala had been dumped in the garage, brown and collapsed inside plastic tubs. My clothes hung in the closet as if I had stepped away for lunch. Grant had removed photographs from the walls but left pale rectangles where they had been. I found my mother's walnut jewelry box open and empty. For one panicked moment, I thought there were more pieces missing. Then I remembered the emeralds were in Maya's safe. In the bottom drawer of Grant's desk, the property officer found a folder containing a draft press statement. It said I had voluntarily entered a residential treatment center after threatening myself and others. There was a blank line for the facility's name. I sat in his chair and stared at the sentence until the letters blurred. Grant had not only planned to call me unstable. He had prepared to announce where I had gone before any place existed. The lie had been waiting for a location. Maya crouched beside me. This helps establish intent. It also means he was sure he could put me somewhere. He was sure no one would ask enough questions. I packed my mother's photographs, my work awards, 3 boxes of books, and the blue ceramic bowl Lena made when I was 12. I left the expensive furniture. Grant had used the house as proof that he owned the shape of my life. I did not want to spend another year fighting over a dining table where he had lied to me. Evelyn came while we loaded the final box. She stood on the driveway holding my passport in a clear evidence sleeve. The house manager found it behind a file cabinet in Grant's office, she said. He told me you took it. I accepted it. The cover was scratched. He invited me to the gala by promising to return this. I know. She looked older than she had 2 months earlier. Grant had stopped speaking to her after her testimony. Several relatives blamed her for exposing family business, as if concealment were the family and truth the betrayal. I should have warned you years ago, she said. There were signs. Would you have believed me if I had warned you about him? Her eyes lowered. Probably not. Then do not ask me to make your guilt smaller. Do something useful with it. She looked up, startled, then nodded. I am revising the foundation's governance. No family member will control client funds or private medical information. And I am resigning after the transition. It was not redemption. It was accountability in its first, uncomfortable form. Chloe gave birth to a son 6 months later. I learned through Maya because Chloe's cooperation agreement produced more documents after the birth. A DNA test confirmed Grant was the father. Ethan filed for divorce and requested that his name not be placed on the birth certificate. He never humiliated Chloe publicly. He simply refused to continue carrying a marriage built on fabricated absences. Chloe sent me one letter. She wrote that envy had entered our friendship long before Grant did. She envied my career, my closeness with my mother, even the way people described me as resilient after infertility. Grant noticed and fed that envy. He told her I secretly considered her shallow. He gave her my earrings because he said I had called them outdated. Each lie worked because it flattered an injury she preferred to hide. She did not ask forgiveness. She wrote, I kept waiting for him to choose me, and I became willing to help him erase you so I would feel chosen. When he asked me to take the blame, I finally saw that he had never chosen either of us. He only chose the person who was easiest to use. I read the letter once and gave it to Maya. Understanding Chloe did not require reopening the door. Ethan and I exchanged 3 messages over the next year, all related to documents. There was no romance. People who heard the story wanted that ending because it created symmetry: betrayed wife, betrayed husband, a new love. Real pain was not that tidy. Ethan needed a life that did not begin as a reaction to Chloe, and so did I. Margaret offered me leadership of a new creative division focused on women-owned companies that had outgrown the language other people imposed on them. On my first day, I nearly declined. Grant's use of my name had made visibility feel dangerous. Every biography, photograph, and public presentation seemed like another piece someone might steal. Margaret placed a blank sheet of paper in front of me. Then write what your name means now, she said. I accepted. We started with 4 employees in a sunlit corner of the agency. Denise Walker became our first client after her claims against Grant's fund moved into mediation. I worried that working with her would look like revenge. She corrected me. I am hiring the person whose judgment I was falsely told I already had, she said. That is not revenge. That is finally making the representation true. Our campaign focused on home health workers whose expertise had been overlooked because care was treated as instinct rather than skill. It won no glamorous award that year, but applications to Denise's training program rose 38%. For the first time in months, a number connected to my name represented something I had actually done. I rented a small house near White Rock Lake with wide windows and a crooked back fence. I chose the paint without asking anyone whether blue-gray looked too cold. I bought a round dining table that seated 6, though at first I ate alone. Lena brought over the ceramic bowl and filled it with lemons. Margaret gave me red glasses with clear lenses as a joke. On my desk, I placed a photograph of Mom wearing the emerald earrings at a summer wedding. Beside it, I put the passport I had forgotten that day. For months, I saw the passport as the object that ruined my life. If I had remembered it, I would have reached New York on time. I would not have opened the bedroom door. Grant might have completed the fund documents, filed the capacity petition, and presented my silence as consent. Eventually, I understood that returning for something small had kept me from losing everything that could not be replaced. Healing embarrassed me at first because it was so ordinary. There was no music when I slept through the night. No audience when I drove past the country club without checking the parking lot for Grant's car. No applause the first time I wore the emeralds and did not imagine Chloe touching them. Therapy helped me separate being calm from being safe. For years, I had believed that if I chose the perfect words, Grant would respond with kindness. When he did not, I edited myself again. My therapist asked me to list every time I had called my own reaction excessive before anyone else did. The list filled 5 pages. I kept working. The New York client that had questioned my stability returned after Margaret sent documentation of the forged materials. Their chief marketing officer apologized in a video call. We reacted to noise, he said. You reacted to a man's accusation before asking the woman doing the work, I replied. If we continue, that failure becomes part of the account review. They agreed. The old Ava would have softened the sentence so no one felt uncomfortable. The woman I was becoming had stopped treating other people's comfort as proof of her professionalism. 10 months after the hotel confrontation, I left a coffee shop downtown and heard my name. Grant stood beside an older sedan at the curb. The tailored jackets, the driver, and the heavy watch were gone. He looked thinner. For one involuntary second, I saw the man who used to bring me coffee during fertility appointments and rub my feet on the nights the medication made my joints ache. The memory hurt because tenderness had existed. It simply had not prevented cruelty. Ava, wait. I stopped several yards away. I have 2 minutes. You heard what happened to the firm. I read the notices my attorney sends me. Robert forced me out. My mother won't speak to me except through counsel. No one will hire me to manage money. Chloe only communicates about the baby through an app. He listed consequences as if reporting vandalism to a house he had left unlocked. Why are you telling me? Because this got out of proportion. If you clarify publicly that the investment issue grew out of a marital dispute, some clients may reconsider. You don't have to forgive me. Just say the recordings lacked context. I laughed once, quietly. You still think your problem is what people believe, not what you did. I made mistakes. You slept with my best friend in my bed. You stole my mother's jewelry to reward her. You forged my signature, used my reputation to raise money, planned to call me incapable, and drafted a statement saying I entered a facility that did not exist. Which of those is a mistake, Grant? Be specific. His face hardened. The old contempt surfaced so quickly that I knew the defeated man had been another negotiation tactic. You benefited from me for years. There it is. I gave you access, contacts, a home people would kill for. And you thought that purchased the right to define my mind. He looked away. Traffic moved behind him. People passed without recognizing either of us. I loved you, he said. Love is not sleeping with my friend while planning to declare me incapable. Love is not giving away my memories to demonstrate power. Love is not asking me to rescue your reputation after you tried to destroy mine. His shoulders lowered. For the first time, he looked tired rather than strategic. I don't know who I am without all of it. Then you finally have to find out without using a woman as a ladder. I walked past him. He did not follow. That afternoon, I wore Mom's emeralds to present the first national campaign produced by my new division. The audience included founders who had been ignored, underestimated, or quietly pushed out of companies they helped build. Denise sat in the front row. Lena cried without attempting to hide it. Evelyn did not attend, but a handwritten note arrived before the presentation. Your voice was never evidence of illness. I am sorry I helped him pretend it was. I kept the note. I did not answer that day. When the final slide faded, Margaret embraced me near the stage. You came back stronger, she said. I shook my head. Beyond the windows, Dallas shimmered in the late sun, no longer a kingdom I had to earn permission to enter. I didn't come back, I said. This woman was never allowed to exist before. That night, friends filled the round table in my little blue-gray house. There were no society photographers, no donor wall, and no one arranging the truth for public consumption. Ethan sent a brief message congratulating me on the campaign. Lena burned the bread. Margaret told the same story twice. I wore the emeralds until midnight, then placed them in their walnut box and left the box unlocked. The passport lay beside my mother's photograph. I touched its scratched cover and thought about the moment my driver asked whether to turn around. I had lost a mansion, a marriage dressed in luxury, and a friendship I once believed would outlive everything. I had also lost the habit of asking permission to trust what I saw. That trust did not arrive as perfect certainty. Some mornings I still questioned whether I had been too sharp, too public, or too unwilling to compromise. Then I remembered the blank line Grant had left for a treatment center and the steady confidence in his voice when he said everyone would believe him. Doubt was no longer an order to retreat. It was a feeling I could examine, answer, and survive. Grant's deepest mistake was believing truth belonged to the person with the microphone. It did not. Truth belonged to the person willing to carry it through humiliation, doubt, paperwork, silence, and the long distance between exposure and justice. A microphone could make a lie loud, but it could not make the dates align, the missing money return, or a forged signature become mine. Power had protected his story only while everyone around him agreed not to inspect it. Once they did, volume became useless. A quiet fact could outlast the loudest performance he staged. And mine no longer whispered. For years, I thought my voice needed the right room, the right tone, and the approval of powerful people. Now I knew better. My voice had never needed permission. It had only needed me to stop surrendering it.